report of a White House freakout over the Epstein files that took place last summer. Vice President J.D. Vance, Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, everybody in between was in a series of situation room meetings, trying to figure out how to handle the crisis over their boss being in the Epstein files. Well, today we've got new reporting from Axios that they are freaking out about the freakout report and just how that information was leaked. Quote, top White House officials believe New York Times reporters Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan obtained audio recordings of situation room meetings for their forthcoming book, Regime Change, on which the Epstein report is based. Congressman Ro Khanna is Democrat of California. He sponsored the Epstein Files Transparency Act as a member of the Oversight Committee, and he joins me now. Congressman, I want to ask you first about one of the bits of reporting in that piece that was about the fact that they had discovered that, contrary to repeated things that Donald Trump had said, that he was never on the plane. That was like a real go-to line of his, going all the way back to 2015. These people were on the plane, I was never on the plane. That in a January 2020 email, a federal prosecutor told a colleague Trump had actually flown on Epstein's private jet, far more than anyone knew. Flight records in the files showed at least 8 trips between 93 and 96, sometimes with his second wife, Marla Maples, sometimes with his children. In January 2024, Trump declared he had never been on the plane. Did you know that when you were sort of pushing for this transparency?
No, I didn't. Even in Watergate, you didn't have the vice president sitting with the attorney general in the situation room saying we need to cover this up, that there are documents that could be incriminating for the president, that we have a real problem not releasing these files, and then contemplating what they can do to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't lose his base. And, you know, when Massey and I were doing this, we honestly didn't think it would have this kind of political ramifications. I mean, we understood the impact on survivors, but obviously they did, and they were in a panic mode, which neither Massey or I realized the extent of it.
Well, one of the things that comes through in this reporting, again, this is not our reporting, this comes from Haberman and Swan at the Times, they have a book coming out that includes some of this, is that one of the things you're contemplating in those meetings is like how much, literally almost explicitly, how much should we cover up and how much should we disclose? Like the question on the table is, should we actually put this out? And one of the things that makes me think is, look, there are millions of documents that they are holding back, I think, through dubious legal arguments. And given the fact that we know that essentially from this reporting they were contemplating explicitly covering stuff up, it does make you really got to wonder about the stuff they're not disclosing.
Absolutely. And we know what hasn't been disclosed. How do we know? Because the survivors' lawyers have seen a lot of these files and they've told us. And what is not being disclosed is the survivors' statements to FBI agents naming other men, naming other people who were part of the Epstein files, Epstein abuse. And what also is not being named and disclosed is things concerning Donald Trump. And now we know that there was a concerted effort for months to deal with what needs to be hidden, what should be disclosed, how to trick the American public. And I'm really looking forward to this book coming out because I think it's going to expose everything to the American public.
On that point, CNN had a piece about Epstein survivors pushing Comer to investigate potential leads from the DOJ's files in private meetings, and that in a private meeting last week, a group of survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse, family members of the late Virginia Giuffre, pointed Comer to allegations from the Justice Department's Epstein files to further investigate. They brought documents from the released files to argue there are allegations against powerful men the Justice Department could pursue. Do you know anything about that?
Well, they know that there are, of course, people like Les Wexner, Leon Black, who have had enormous allegations. And these survivors are seeing these people not be investigated, not be prosecuted. Chris, there hasn't been a single investigation or prosecution of all the files that have been released, and other countries are doing it. And Todd Blanche needs to be asked when he comes for Senate confirmation, will you commit to releasing the remaining files? And will you commit to actually investigating some of the people in these files? Will you at least sit down with the survivors? They are refusing to meet with the survivors' lawyers. For a party that talks about standing up for victims and victims' rights, they certainly don't want to meet these victims.
We talked early in the program